Do not adjust your digital device. What you are about to see and hear may shock and appall you. Join our hosts as they encounter countless thrills, spills, chills, and hilarity as they explore the very weirdest in pop culture. The following media is so strange, so beyond the scope of what is normal, it will make you ask the question, why does this exist? Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
And today we have got quite the show for you. We mentioned this during our episode of Saint Anger, and that got to us thinking when it came to brainstorming time. So now we are finally going to unleash this over to you. We are going to do the counterpart of Saint Anger, basically I guess you could say Megadeth's the Megadeth version of Saint Anger, or the Megadeth equivalent of Saint Anger. We're going to be talking about Risk today. Now, when I first took a look at what the schedule was, I just we only had the word Risk there, and we had done this maybe a month or two, maybe about a month ago, and I forgot what the schedule was. So I took a look at it and I saw Risk and I was like, oh God, I have to play the freaking board game tonight. I don't know how to play the game. I don't even own the game. I'm like, what's so weird about that? Yes, it's a game where you're trying to just take over the world, but that's kind of most games in a way. I'm not sure what makes it so. I'm not sure what makes this weird other than it being referenced on a Seinfeld episode. But I was freaking out for a minute.
How was it referenced on? Because when Kramer and Newman are playing it.
Yes. But yeah, I was freaking out for a minute. I thought that I was like, oh God, what do I have to do? Can I even do this show? What do you mean Risk? And then I go to the gym and I'm listening to Megadeth and I'm like, oh, that Risk. So all was right with the world for a fleeting moment of time until I listened to this album, which I hadn't listened to it before. So I was expecting it to be much worse. But anyway, we are Why Does This Exist? We are a podcast that talks about the very weirdest in pop culture, whether it be a strange album for one reason or another, like we are about to discuss, or a bizarre movie like we spoke about a few weeks ago with Beverly Hills Ninja, which, to do a correction on that really quick, Chris Farley actually knew that it was a bad idea. He didn't really want to do the movie. He actually cried during the premiere because of how bad it was, but he did it because his father told him you can't turn down that kind of money. They offered him
really?
$6 million. Yes. The trivia section of Beverly Hills Ninja's IMDb actually has quite a bit of detail that you cannot find anywhere else on the internet. So somebody involved has probably been leaking info in there the entire time, and we just happened to not catch it. But anyway, we like to talk about anything weird in pop culture, whether it has happened, will happen, such as the Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey movie or the Renfield movie, which if you haven't seen the trailers for any of those, I highly suggest you check it out because they're really weird. But you can support us a number of ways. You can the best way is through Patreon. That's patreon.com/why does this exist. Give us as little as $1. You can get some early access to our recordings. You could probably even sit in on a session if you wanted to, but and you could also take a look at our schedule, throw out some ideas if you want, and just talk to us in the chat and let us know how we're doing. You can also email us at whydoesthisexistshow@gmail.com. And you can also check out our articles on whydoesthisexistpod.com. Our man Tony is writing up a storm. We should have another article from him coming up this week, talking about a recent concert that he attended. I also was in attendance for Merciful Fate in Brooklyn, New York, in November of last year, which was a lot of fun. That should be going up this week. Nice. And you can also, of course, support us on social media. That is facebook.com. I believe Why Does This Exist Pod or Why Does This Exist Show. I don't have it in front of me right now. I should, but I don't.
I believe it's Pod.
I believe it's Pod also. We're also on South African Twitter. We don't really use it that much, but we're there. And you could follow us if you like, if you're even still on that platform. Maybe we'll switch over to Mastodon, but also, like, we kind of just like talking and throwing it up on somewhere, whether or not that's for the best or worst case situation. We want to thank each and every one of you for listening to us and just telling other people about us. We hope that you like it, and if you don't, well, then that's too bad. Because we ain't changing for nobody, baby. We'll be making major motion pictures of this one day in the future, baby. I promise. That's the news. Here's the weather. You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge from a ragtag group of rogues, so let's get on with the goddamn show. Also, I would like to say that Craig, the Discord bot that is recording us right now, is doing a bang up job.
Yeah.
If you use Discord for any of your podcasting or the way that you can communicate with people online, Craig is your man, or bear, really. He's not a man bear or a man bear pig. He's just a bear, a bot. He's a half bot, half half bear. He's a robo bear. He's a bear? Bear bot. I don't know. He's Craig. All right, you talk about this album
All
since
right.
since Megadeth is one of your favorite bands. I
Yeah.
like them a lot. They're really great too. They're one of my favorites also, but more so you than I.
Yes. Yeah. So in order to manage risk, we must first understand risk. How do you spot risk? How do you avoid risk? And what makes it so risky?
Are we still talking about music?
Anyway, so Megadeth's Risk is it was a 1999 album. It was a follow up to Cryptic Writings, which was a fairly big commercial success for them. I would say if Megadeth has a black album, it's probably Cryptic Writings, or either that or uh uh uh
Rust in peace.
no, Countdown to Extinction is
Mhm.
probably either that or Cryptic Writings is probably their black album.
Oh,
Because
I thought you meant in terms of like financial success.
Oh, in financial success, probably more so, uh, Countdown to Extinction.
Hmm.
I think Cryptic Writings was more in terms of, like, their sound change becoming more mainstream, like, rock/metal. 'Cause, Cryptic Writings has some thrashier songs, but, like, there's also, like, a lot more melodic songs uh, so I think it was kinda, like, more like starting their, like, transition
Big Writings
into.
is also has a little bit slower paced songs on there too,
Yes. Yeah.
but they're still they're still well paced
Yes.
and also well structured. So people don't seem to mind it. Like Trust is actually a staple at their concerts, and a lot of people
Yes.
really enjoy that song. And it is a
She-Wolf
good
too.
song.
There's a few
Yes,
good,
so is She
songs
Wolf.
on the album. It was quite a good album. I mean, a lot of, thrash metal purists don't like it, but I mean, they don't like anything, so so, let's face it, if it's not friggin' Black Magic by Slayer, it's not good. Um,
Yeah, I think that's about accurate enough.
uh, but Risk was not good, and after obviously the follow up to so it was also the first album in years that like didn't have Nick Menza cuz he had been fired after the recording of Cryptic Writings, and Jimmy DeGrasso joined the
This
band.
was his first album with them, Jimmy DeGrasso. This was
Yes.
also Marty Friedman's last album with
Yes.
them.
Yes. Um and it was like so the reason why Dave Mustaine decided to do this album was because he stupidly took the advice of Lars Ulrich, who told him that he should take more risks with his music. And for those who don't know, obviously, Dave Mustaine was in Metallica. He was their first well, he wasn't technically their first guitar player, but he was like their first live guitar player, and he was in the band for several demos and actually traveled with them to the New York, New Jersey area to record uh, the first album, Kill 'Em All, but was fired before they started the recording process. Um, and there's always been bad blood for many years between between Megadeth and Metallica, and
Right. They
specifically
only
between
recently resolved it around the 30th
yes,
anniversary of Metallica.
yes, especially between Lars and Dave, I think. But it's weird because Lars and Dave had this like weird relationship throughout the years where it was like almost like they were divorced, like they were like a married couple that got divorced because they would still like talk to each other and like sometimes say nice things about each other, but then also say bad things. It was like a very strange relationship that they had. So and for some reason Dave Mustaine would like take Lars
Well,
Ulrich's like words to heart.
he was his little Danish friend that he used to smoke hash with.
Yeah, exactly. That was Dave's words, by the way.
If you from the Metallica Some Kind of Monster
Yes.
movie, which we spoke about at length during the Saint Anger podcast
Yes.
from a year ago.
Yes. It was I can't believe it was a year ago. Wow, we're doing Risk
Yes.
almost exactly a year later. That's
Yeah, this is
crazy. That was
90,
again,
yeah,
not planned. Not
not
planned.
planned, not planned. Actually, let me
Um,
see when we did this episode. You keep talking. I'm
all
going to
right.
just
So Lars goes to Dave and says that he should take more risks with his music. And
just take some more
apparently
fucking risks with your fucking music.
oh, look at your fucking knapsack, huh? Uh
I
so
take risks with my knapsack all the time and my hat. Do you know where my fucking hat is?
where's my fucking hat, man?
Can I get my fucking hat back?
Um Lars so for some reason Dave fucking like like literally follows Lars's directions like it's
Promised
fucking
myself
the
I
word
wouldn't
of
curse
God
so
himself.
much.
Um and
February 5th. Holy crap. We are
wow.
like 3
So
weeks
days.
apart.
Yeah.
Almost 3 weeks apart from
There
this.
you go.
Wow. February 5th, 2022 was the Saint Anger episode.
And now February or
Episode 45.
January
And
19th, 2023 we have the Risk episode. So
yes, happy birthday,
almost a year later.
Fred. My good
Fred?
friend, yeah, my good friend, my childhood friend and good friend Fred.
Oh, nice.
Today is his birthday. So happy birthday, Fred. I know you're not going to listen to this.
um Yeah, so Dave decides that he's gonna do exactly what Lars tells him to do. And apparently also like Marty Friedman
Which,
wanted
if you
kind of
know Lars and which, if you followed Lars Ulrich's life, the '90s was not really a time of good decisions
no,
for
no, it
him.
was not at all. Um, and apparently Marty Friedman also wanted to do like a more mainstream record, and so Dave kind of wanted to indulge that a little bit as well.
Yes, because,
Um,
well, I mean, Marley Friedman is one thing.
right.
I
Well,
mean,
I would
he
go
is
with
very good, and
Marty
he kind of helped
exactly.
push Megadeth into the stratosphere.
Yeah, I would go with
So
Marty
I
Friedman's
would,
like
I
thing
would let
rather than Lars.
yes, but to be fair, Marty Friedman he was kind of a little burnt out of metal at the time, and he wasn't
Yes.
really interested in. He was clearly losing his interest in Megadeth, in just metal in general, and
Yeah.
now he left the band after this album anyway, and now he's lived in Japan for many years now, and he contributes a lot of music to like TV shows and theme songs and things like that, and he records on like various J-pop albums and things like that. So he's really just done a whole lot just getting involved in like the Japanese music scene. So good for
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. Um, so they decide to do the this different kind of album where uh it wasn't what they were normally into. It wasn't like I mean, and if you listen to the songs on it, they're not like it's very strange because
It's
like they have like there's certain like parts where it feels like it's like a Megadeth song where like all of a sudden like it's like this really weird like just regular like mainstream rock song and then all of a sudden there's like this fucking ridiculous like guitar solo out of nowhere and it's very like
yeah,
Megadeth
I
and of
would.
course it's Dave's fucking vocals over
Well, he's really trying to sing in this. Like, there's some
yes.
tracks where he actually does sing them fairly well.
Yeah, and I want to
I
get to
would
that. We'll go to a
like,
track by track breakdown because there
yes,
are some good songs on this album, and
yeah, I would
I want to
say
talk about them.
honestly, the like from Okay, so I listened to it for the first time today. I listened to it twice,
Yeah,
and because this album is so panned, I expected it to be the like a very I expected it to be a direct equivalent to Saint Anger,
yeah,
just to make that comparison again. Where Saint Anger, I can't listen to at all. I can't stomach it once. I can't get past the first song or two. I really just that album is just I can't listen to this no matter what.
yeah,
Where this album, I was listening to it and I was waiting, like expecting to hate this thing. Like I
yeah.
thought that I was going to be punishing myself, and
You want to hate it because it's like this is like it shouldn't
well,
be Megadeth. Like
yes, my expectations were, oh, this is an awful album, and I kept listening to it. I was like, this is this is only bad because it has Megadeth's name on
yes,
it.
yeah,
But
and that's the point I wanted to make is
and
that
Dave Mustaine has said that too over the years, where the
yes,
worst decision was to put the Megadeth name on it,
yes. If
where
he had
anybody
just
else would have been great.
they could have literally just like came up with a different name or even like just put it out as a Dave Mustaine solo record with just like Megadeth as the band,
Yeah.
like the session musicians. And it would have been fine. It would have been very well received, I think, because there are good songs on this album.
Yeah,
And
it's not bad. It's
they're
just
just
not
not good.
Megadeth.
Exactly. They're not good Megadeth songs. That's the
Yes.
problem. And that was like kind of like when the album came out, that was kind of the consensus among critics. It received mixed reviews, not
Yeah.
bad reviews, mixed because
Yes.
and what happened was is that like reviewers that didn't really listen to Megadeth, like that were more mainstream, like Entertainment Weekly gave it a B minus, and the Los Angeles Times get it 3 out of 4 stars. They gave it good reviews, or average to good reviews because it's not terrible. Like it's a decent they're decent rock songs, but bands that like or rather reviewers that knew Megadeth and that were like focused more on metal like records and stuff like that gave them bad reviews because like, well, this is shitty. This is not Megadeth. This is Megadeth selling out. Is basically what the consensus was.
New Music Express gave it a 0 out of 10.
Yes,
And
0 out of 10.
Metal Forces gave it a 6 out of 10, which is probably generous for them
Yeah,
to have given this that at all.
yeah. So and that was like the pretty much like the like across the board, like more mainstream publications that didn't like necessarily do a lot of like Megadeth record reviews gave them fairly decent reviews, whereas not like great outstanding reviews, but like average to good. They're not saying like, oh, this is the best album of 1999, but you know what? It's not the worst album of 1999. Um,
Right.
uh, so and you know for Megadeth to put out what they put out, it like does have somewhat of a 90s sound to it. More of like a, I would say, going towards more of like a 90s alternative rock slash industrial in some aspects
Well, this
rather than
time
like grunge.
period this time period was very weird for metal.
Yes.
It was a big inflection point. The 90s through the early 2000s in general were a very rocky period for metal, especially
Yes.
thrash metal in general.
Yeah. Well, thrash metal was pretty much
Thrash
dead at this
metal
point.
was, yes, for many, like it was like the second that grunge happened,
Yes.
the like
Thrash
from
died.
for whatever reason, the moment that grunge happened, everything like thrash just totally collapsed. Anything that was following thrash metal or that was heavily invested in it, people just stopped coming.
Hmm.
Like
And
the
thrash metal
tours,
bands stopped recording thrash. They started recording like the ones that didn't
well, the
break
ones that
up
didn't die or break up,
became
like
like they
because
started
so
recording
many of
other
them
music.
became obsolete and they had to get new jobs. And
Yes.
anything metal, and the only cool kids in metal were the death metal bands and the black metal bands that were coming out of the
Yeah.
woodwork
Yeah.
and creating their own thing, and grind bands and all and what have you. So extreme music was where it was starting, like
And
that was slow, that was starting to build up again because it was a
progressive metal too was like
yes.
becoming because even like death, like if you look at like the Sound of Perseverance was like it wasn't so much like obviously it's a death album, so it's very death metal, but also like the the structure of the songs, it's very progressive. So like it wasn't just a straight up death metal album like spiritual healing or something like that. It was way
Right.
more progressive. And then you started having bands like Opeth and all these other ones, these prog metal bands, coming out of the
Right.
90s.
Right. And Dream Theater as well.
Yeah,
And
Dream
just you
Theater,
had
yeah.
so like things. It was a big shift
Yes.
for metal in general.
Yeah.
And if you were playing thrash metal, you were pretty screwed
Yes.
just
Unless you
because
were
it.
Metallica.
Yeah, just because it was the times. But all of the bigger bands like Megadeth, Metallica, even Anthrax,
Yep.
like all of the big four bands, like Slayer. Well, Slayer was the probably the only one that really didn't deviate because like even if you went to Germany, like
Creator did. Creator
creators
did
started
an
to get
industrial album, like.
yeah, yeah, like every band like the surviving thrash bands tried to like really tried to change their style to something that might work
Yeah.
because they were like, well, we're not changing everything completely, but we don't know how because we want to keep our identity, but we also can't do what we've been doing because that's not working right now.
Yeah.
Like we know we have to adapt, but how do we adapt? And you know, it was a very weird period for that style of music.
Yes.
So you had all these thrash bands trying things that are not thrash, but they had their name on it and
Yeah.
like just because of years of branding and everything and most of it received mixed reviews at best.
Yeah.
Some better than others. Some things are just trashed completely.
Well,
But I want to say Slayer was really the only one that did not really change their style or anything. But
yeah.
they just experienced a slump with Diabolus and Musica just because people just weren't buying that at the time,
Yeah.
or at least they weren't buying it in droves that they used to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
So
the '90s,
you have to at least give them credit for not changing.
like, genre metal became, like, not as popular in the ni so, like, because thrash is a very niche genre. In the '80s, it was
Yes.
huge, and, like, same thing with, like, glam metal. Like, glam metal died off in the '90s too, rightfully so, because it was
I mean, I
awful.
would say metal in general was just huge
I
in
don't
the 80s.
well, yes, but I think metal stayed huge in the '90s. It's just that the very specific niche metal bands couldn't compete. Like, people wanted more like a more like broader definition of metal. And so that's why you
Yes.
had these bands doing other, like, experimenting with other sounds, like,
Right.
Metallica
Well,
did.
also you ended up well in the early and then but the shift in the late 90s to the early 2000s started like you started getting the alternative rock, which is where we ended up
Yes.
getting the sound for Risk in 99.
Yes. Well, yeah, and also, started, like, kind of incorporating a little bit more electronic music into the
Sure.
into it. That was, like, very popular into the and from the '90s into the 2000s, because obviously you had the rise of new metal too in the early 2000s, which heavily used, electronics and samples and
Right.
that kind of
And
thing.
more goth music too, which
Yes,
also
yep,
borrowed from electronic music as
yes.
well.
Yeah, there was a lot of electronic music in goth, and industrial was huge in the '90s.
Yes.
Industrial blew up in the '90s and into the
Yeah. I mean
2000s.
also because there was a lot more electronics going on in pop music. So
Yes.
that really set the state that really set the course for the rest of the industry.
Yeah, I would say it's hard to say because there was a lot of electronic pop music and there was a lot of synth music in the '80s, but I would say the '90s was really the golden age of electronic and computer music, because that was like when you had not going straying from metal, besides like the industrial and all the metal bands that were using it. That was like the '90s was like the time of like techno and house music. That was like everything was that. Everything sounded had like a dance beat and like synths, in pop music at least. And even like rap music. You look at like at least West Coast rap used a shit ton of synthesizers, especially after like companies started suing for samples, and a lot of the rappers started doing their own beats so that they didn't have to sample music and worry about getting sued. Like like synths became huge, and that was like a big thing in the West Coast sound. Uh, in gangster rap, you had Dr. Dre doing these like crazy like synth lines and stuff like
Yeah.
that over. And
Well, that was where he really started to take off as a producer.
yes, yeah, exactly. So you had, he was doing, Snoop Dogg, Tupac, all that, and they all had that like synth sound,
I mean, he was Mr. Death Row Records,
Yes.
basically.
Yeah. Um, so, you know, that's kind of Megadeth kind of like did that a little bit too. You could hear that there is some, synth and electronic music on this record. And I think that kind of turned off a lot of the metal purists too, because, metal purists, oh, you could only have guitars and drums. Anything else sucks, you
For
know?
me, that's like for me, just hearing those sections just didn't fit. Like
Yes.
it doesn't fit with the song.
Well, that's what I had said
Like when we
before.
do our breakdown, well, I'll get into like more of a I'll get
Yeah.
more into it, but like that song "The Doctor Is Calling," I
Yeah.
really was like, oh, this song is weird.
Yes.
Like it just, I was like, it's trying,
But
but
it
it's
works on
just
other songs though, because like if you listen to
some songs it's fine.
Wanderlust,
Like seven, I actually didn't mind,
yes.
and
Wanderlust
Wanderlust
is a
is
great
very
song.
good.
Yeah, Wanderlust is a great song, and
I
again, like,
also liked "I'll Be There."
I like "I'll Be There" too, and actually that became one of Megadeth's classic songs when they went to Argentina, because
Right.
that was like, because in Argentina, you know, they are like, because they don't really get a lot of tours, anything that they played was, like, huge there, so, like,
Yeah.
Megadeth would play that, and,
And
like,
that
that was
DVD is great, that
yeah.
one night.
Yeah,
And
it is great, and that became, like, Megadeth's song to them, like, to the fans that were, like, diehard fans that, like, didn't care that, like, this was a different album, you know?
yeah.
Um, so and I think that's a big part of the problem with the album is that it was just so jarring for a lot of people, and that's why it kinda really got, like, looked over by a lot of metal fans, 'cause they were not expecting what came out, and I think it was just too much. It wasn't enough of a gradual or transition into this, and like you said before, if Dave had just done this as a solo record and not put Megadeth's name on it, it would have been had like way better like reception from
Yeah.
the fans. And I don't understand why he didn't do it, because he had done a side project around the same time. He did MD45, like right around the same time as Risk. It was in the mid 90s. So it was like a couple years before, but still like, so what, he wasn't like averse to doing a side project that wasn't Megadeth.
I guess
That
the thought, maybe the thought just didn't enter his mind because
yeah,
he was focused on making Marty and Nick Menza happy, and Nick Menza like wasn't like it got kicked out of the band anyway, but Marty Friedman really was like, hey, we should do it, and like producers and the suits were like, yeah, you should change up your sound a little bit, maybe it'll like, you should go for that mainstream appeal.
yeah,
So I'm sure there were a lot of people telling him, like pushing along to do this, and poor Jimmy DeGrasso wanted to, like, he's new to the band, and he was like, oh, I thought we were gonna do a Megadeth album, and
yeah,
they were like, well, no, we're not gonna. So like everybody kind of wanted to try something different, and their manager, Bud Prager, was like, hey, you should do something like totally different that will make everybody say, "Oh man, how come we didn't think of that?" And like all of these different ideas were bouncing around in his head, and he was probably like, "All right, I guess we can try it."
yeah.
And you know, he did. So maybe the thought wasn't really there, or maybe it was discussed and like nobody really agreed to it.
Yeah, and I think partially Dave wanted to have a record that sold as good as Load and Reload. He wanted to have a number one record
Probably.
that went
uh,
platinum.
I'm sure there was something like in the back of his mind that like
Yes.
wanted that, because at the time they were still not on good terms. So he's
Yes.
always been kind of trying to like, get his revenge on them at this point in time in
And
one way
the
or
thing was is that
another.
if he had just, like, lived his life the way it was, like, Megadeth is, like, great. Like, Megadeth is great on its own. He doesn't need to compete with Metallica. He
No,
made a band that's so good, and, like, who cares if he didn't get the same mainstream success? Like, he was still very successful, and he did music for a living. Like, he doesn't have to worry about money, you know? The guy's rich. He freaking
right.
drives an Aston Martin, you know? Like,
Beautiful.
and, like, okay, yeah, he doesn't have the money Metallica does, but he's still, like, a multi-millionaire, so what, you made it, dude. It's like,
Yeah,
stop
what
trying
is
to
the
compete with
problem?
them. Like, I mean,
Yeah, which it seems like he's come to terms with that in the
yes,
like more recent years.
yes.
But for the longest time, and he mentions this during some kind of monster when they're doing the group therapy session where he's like, where where like he's saying like I just like I can't get over this one stupid thing that happened, no matter how successful I become.
Right.
Where
Right, he always
it
felt like that
seems
Metallica was, like, standing on his back while, while he was kinda, like, stuck in the mud. It's like, "But you didn't, Dave. You did your own thing, and you did great." Like,
right,
um, so, like, again, the part of it was too was, like, when like, Lars had told him he has to take more risks, he took it as, like, a challenge, like, "Okay, now I have to beat Lars and, like, make a record take a
right,
risk and make a record that's great so I can, like, shut him up." And it's like,
right, and it was the
"But y"
biggest detriment
Right.
to it. I mean, the thing that also made me not look forward to listening to this album was simply because, well, was the artwork in
Yes.
general. It's a very weird cover.
Yes, it
And
is.
I remember for like I never really noticed it. So for years I would just see it on the shelf and I would kind of look past it and I would just think, and for some weird reason I had in my head that the cat was like an eagle.
Oh, okay.
Like I just never real I never paid any real attention to the cover because I was like, well, I'm not gonna listen to this. So like, or just like I would go through the Megadeth like section of of like, and I would just go through everything looking to see what they had, and every time I would just skip Risk immediately because it was just, what am I going to even bother looking at this for? I know this
Yeah.
album is trash, so I'm not going to. So I'm not even going to entertain the idea of looking at this album. So when I finally like sat down and looked at it the night before, I was like, "Oh God, it's it's a cat stalking a mouse right next to a mouse trap about to get a piece of cheese." So it's a tongue in cheek joke where it's like the mouse is taking a risk,
Yeah.
and it's like the I didn't really watch the video just yet for I think it's Crush 'em,
Yeah. Crush
but
'em had a video.
it follows but like one of the videos on the album follows that's the storyline of the album cover,
Yeah.
and they just take weird angles of this cat that looks like Mr. Bigglesworth, and it's just trying to like it's waiting to see how to like eat this mouse after it, and like the mouse wants to get the cheese on the mouse trap.
Yeah.
So like, and they try to make it like there's tension, and like it's an ear, and like they try to make it creepy, and like there's tension there, and like they try to make you care about the mouse, and they want you to get invested in like, oh, is this mouse gonna live or is it gonna die? And it's like, why the hell should I care?
Yeah.
This happens all the time, every day. I don't care if the cat is a Bond villain's pet, and this is what it does. I don't even know. Like, what if like I don't like what if the cat was like able to like set the trap using its hands, well, using its paws? That would be something to watch. But I I don't really care what happens to this thing. Which, spoiler alert, the mouse walks away. I only know this because I was watching the making of Risk that came out with the 2004 remaster. I
Yeah.
believe it was 2004 or
Yes.
2003, the
Yeah, that's when they
remaster.
remastered it was 2004, they remastered all the albums.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, they had like the whole DVD component because that was the thing at the time.
Yep.
Whenever you got a remastered or a special edition, it would come with a DVD of
Yeah.
things,
Yep.
and
And then,
that
of
was
course, they
part
had
of it.
bonus tracks and,
Yeah,
um,
but
the
yeah, the artwork's just not great to look at, and also when you see the album art of all the other Megadeth albums, it's like this, like one of these things does not belong here,
Yeah, well, I would
and
say
it's Risk.
the 2004 remaster one is better than the OG one because the original 1999 artwork is just lame. It's literally just like the mousetrap, but like not even the full mousetrap. It's just like the wood with like the snapper thing, and it just says
Really?
Megadeth burned into it. Yeah, it's so
Oh,
stupid. It's like really like boring, and it's like, well, what the fuck is this?
huh.
At least like the one, like the 2004 remaster one is a little bit more going on, and it's kind of like, again, like you said, like a
Oh,
tongue in
I
cheek
see it.
thing.
Yeah, this is real. Yeah, that is the lamest cover.
Yeah.
It
It's like they were
doesn't.
trying to purposely be minimalist to, like, make a statement or something, but it's just stupid and boring,
Huh. Yeah, that is really dumb.
especially compared to the other Megadeth artworks, like you said,
Oh, and the back cover is the other half of the mousetrap.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, both covers suck. At the end of the day, these are both awful album covers.
yeah. Um, so, I guess we could talk about the songs a little bit. Let's talk about Crush 'Em first because Crush 'Em was, like, the first I think it was the first single, and,
It
in
was.
my
There were
opinion,
two. There
is
was
by
Crush 'Em.
far
There
the
were
worst
three.
it's by far the worst song on the album, so I don't know
This
how it
is
became a
probably
single.
the. This is arguably the worst song that Megadeth has ever done.
Yes. It is awful. And
Yeah.
so Dave
Like
Mustaine
they
wrote
like this song's only claim to fame is being in John Claude Van Damme's movie Universal Soldier, which came out the same year.
yeah.
Universal Soldier: The Return.
Yeah, so it wasn't even like the
So it
first
wasn't
one, it
even the
was the
main one.
sequel.
It was a song in a Jean Claude Van Damme movie.
Yeah, yeah, so
So
and Dave Mustaine, when he
do
wrote the
so
song, he
do
he
whatever you want to do with that information.
he well, he intended it to be as, like, an entrance music for, like, sports teams and, like, hockey players and stuff, and,
Oh, that's why it's as slow as it is.
yes, and it was, like, the whole, like because it
Oh,
goes, like, "Enter the arena and then crush them," and that was, like, the whole point, and it's like it's just so stupid, and apparently Dave Mustaine hates this song too. In his autobiography, he talks about this a little bit. That after they
I
had finished
haven't read that in
recording,
a long time.
me neither, but I remember this specifically because it stuck out for me. After they had finished the recording, and he heard the first mix of it. He literally got physically sick to his stomach and had to leave the studio to throw up.
God,
Like that's how much he hated this song. And he was like, "This is like it's gonna ruin me." That's what his thought was like. I just fucking killed my career with this song.
Jesus.
Um, so I mean, it's a good thing that there are other good songs on this album, and I don't know why "Crush 'Em" became one of the singles because it is awful.
Yeah, I
Um,
feel like
it's a
why
fucking
wouldn't
disco song. It's literally a disco song.
at best. I mean, on the making of, they talk about how they were listening to songs that they wouldn't be caught dead listening to in their car in the studio, and
Yeah.
how disco comes up, disco country music, and
Yep.
all like 70s rock and Flock of Seagulls and all this stuff. They're like trying all these different things, and when they're talking about the making of, they're like, oh, we tried all these things like American hard rock mixed with kind of like the more like British invasion and like stuff, and it's like and like some of and like they also mention the new wave of British heavy metal, which there's really not much other than maybe the solos. And
Yeah.
but yeah, there's a lot of weird influences that kind of
Yeah.
don't really mesh that well on this.
No, it's very, like, jarring sometimes 'cause it's like you're listening to, like, a song, and it's like a mainstream rock song, and then all of a sudden Dave Mustaine's vocals come on, and you're like, "Okay," and then all of a sudden there's, like, a Marty Friedman solo throw, and it's like, "What the
Yeah,
fuck is happening right now?" It's like I'm listening to 3 different genres mashed up into one song, but not in a good way, you
yeah,
know?
and then every once in a while and then every once in a while there's a part where it's like, oh, that's an actual Megadeth riff.
Yes.
What is that doing there? And you
Yeah.
shouldn't be saying that on a Megadeth album.
Yeah. Um, so,
Yeah,
yeah,
Crush 'Em
Crush
is
'Em,
freaking terrible.
awful. Least favorite song by far. Um Uh, there are a couple okay ones. Insomnia is okay. It's a little cheesy in the chorus is a little cheesy because it's like insomnia, omnia, like whatever.
I
It's okay.
it's
I mean, I
it's
could give her a
probably the best one of the 3 singles released.
yeah.
I don't like Breadline at
I
all. I
I
don't
like
even
Breadline.
Oh, I
Breadline
didn't
is my
like it.
favorite. Is my favorite of the three singles.
Lyrically, I really don't like it, and, the song, I just can't get into it. Like, I keep listening I listened to it a few times today, and every time I had the same reaction, which was, the song is just really weird.
See, I like it because I think it's like a good like song kind of about people that are down on their luck and kind of like the homeless. I think it's like kind of like a good anthem for that. It's like kind of like telling a story a little bit. Um,
I guess.
Enter the Arena is a useless fucking like
I'm kind of
instrumental.
it
Like
is really dumb. And
it's like
the problem is Enter the Arena builds up like there's gonna be something good coming out of it, and then
yeah,
you get freaking Crush 'Em.
Yeah, and it like and it's weird because it's not like it builds up and then goes into like Crush 'Em and it's like, going. It's like cuz it builds up and then goes back down and then Crush 'Em builds up. So it's like what the fuck were they doing? Like what's the point of Enter the Arena is literally the most useless track on this album. It's just there because like Mustaine probably is like, "Oh, I'm going to put a guitar track here." Like it's very strange. Um Prince of Darkness is okay.
I
I'm not a
thought that
huge
there would
fan
be
of
an.
it.
I was expecting an Ozzy appearance on this, and I was very disappointed.
um, like I said, Wanderlust is probably my favorite song on the album.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
good one.
it's a fairly good song. It's got like a nice almost like kind of like almost like a country vibe to it, but not in a bad way. It's
Yeah,
kind of like
I,
a
I,
southern rock song almost.
I forget if it's one of these. If it's one of the songs on Risk, if it's "I'll Be There" or "Wanderlust," but if it's either of those albums at all, if it's either of those songs at all, or even on this album, but I want to say that he talks about this in this book, and I can't remember which song it is, but I want to say that one of these he wrote for his wife, Pam,
Uh,
because she said that because he had several songs on the earlier albums about his ex fiance, I believe, Diana, who
yeah.
which was a very toxic relationship for the both of them, and his wife one day was just like, "How come you never wrote a song for me? Like your actual wife, who you have a good relationship with?" And he was just kind of like, "I don't know, I just never did." So he like wrote. I don't know if it was one of the songs on this album.
It wasn't on this album. I know what song
Okay.
you're talking about. It was actually on Endgame. It was Sealed with a Kiss or whatever.
Oh, okay. And she didn't like it,
Yeah, she hated it, which is just
which
hilarious.
go figure.
Yeah. Um, so
Okay, so I'm an idiot.
that's it's all right.
But
So
that's the story there.
yeah, Wanderlust. It's could be like I kind of like feel like it's kind of Mustaine's answer to like Wherever I May Roam or The Unforgiven a little bit. Like it's kind of got that kind of vibe to it. Um,
Oh, I didn't think about that. That like I
y-
just
y-
thought, oh, this is actually a pretty cool song.
yeah, the um chorus is very like I said, it's very like almost like a country or southern rock song. Um but the verses are really cool because it's like Mustaine's got these like whispering vocals almost, and it's like it sounds like really cool and like mysterious. So I like it a lot. It's my favorite, like I said, my favorite song on the album. Um I'll Be There is another great song. Uh
It's probably my favorite song on the album.
yeah, it's a really
Like
heartfelt
I
song.
I found myself occasionally humming it
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. It's catchy and it's like a nice song, and it's nice that he like dedicated it to the fans. It's really like it feels like that's what Mustaine like really like opening up his heart and like saying what he really feels, which is cool. Um and it's not a bad song. It's like, the riffs are okay. It's slower obviously like all the other songs on the album, but it's not terrible. Um let's see.
I do not like "The Doctor Is
No,
Calling."
The Doctor Was Calling
That
is
song
very
is
strange.
very bizarre, and
Yes.
when they throw the kid's voice in there, it makes no sense. Like
Yeah. I
a
feel like
it's a very weird song. I don't know what they like when I listen to that song, like in the exact order that this appears on on the album, like from Enter the Arena to The Doctor Is Calling. I kept like I kept asking the question, who is this for
yeah.
those for all of those songs,
Yeah.
like that whole section of the album. I was like, who is this portion of the album for? Because I
What the
can't see
Doctor is
anybody
calling
liking this.
the Doctor is calling kind of reminds me of like on from the Ozzy album No More Tears, that song Mr. Tinker Train.
Oh, I love that
I
song.
love that song too. The Doctor is calling is like that. It's like Mustaine trying to make that song, but not
It's
good at
the
all.
anti Tinker Train.
Yeah, the anti Tinker Train.
I
It's just very
guess
strange, and his like vocals are just very weird on it. It's just
it's just a it's just a weird song.
yeah.
and
It
they're messing too much with electronica. I don't understand what's going on when it comes to that song.
yeah,
Like, Crush 'Em, I at least understand what they were going for, but it just failed.
yeah,
Where The Doctor's Calling, I don't know what the idea was behind this.
yeah.
Like, it wasn't like it doesn't even seem like throwing something at a wall to see what sticks. It just seems like this was just it just seems like I don't know. It just seems like it seems like they left the room and forgot that, like, they had food in the room and they didn't cover it and put it in the refrigerator, and
And it got moldy.
it got moldy and, like, there was enough things in the room because they were doing drugs that it came to life.
Yeah,
Whatever that is, that's what The Doctor is calling is.
yeah. It's
I
yeah,
I don't know. The only way that I could describe this song is it sounds like it happened by accident, and they
yeah,
forgot to get rid of it, or they wrote it as a joke, and, like, they forgot to tell the guy who was putting the album together to, like, not do anything with that track, and it just wound up on there when it was too late.
yeah,
Like, I don't know how this song came into being, but this is probably the second worst song on the
yeah.
album. Somehow it's not the worst song of Megadeth's career. It's the weirdest, but it's not the worst because
No.
Crush 'Em is clearly the
Yeah,
worst.
well, yeah, Crush 'Em is by far the worst. It's just so
Like
bad.
The Doctor's Calling might confuse me, but Crush 'Em is just I hate this and want it to be eliminated from existence.
Yeah. Yes. Um, that yeah.
Ecstasy is not Wanderlust is good. Ecstasy is not bad either.
I
I
like
like
Ecstasy.
it's a little catchy at points.
Yeah, and it's not like it's I mean, it's again, no song on this album is great. It's definitely not they're not even close to being Megadeth's best songs, but
No, but this was one of the
Ecstasy
songs where I was like, "Oh, this is good."
yeah, it's an enjoyable song. It's like, okay, I'll listen to this. Like, and again, if it wasn't Megadeth, I'd be like, this is a pretty good song. Like, what band is
Yeah.
this? You know, if I didn't know it was Megadeth. Um, so it's not bad. And like apparently, it was described allegedly, um, as in one of the reviews, it sounded something like apparently it was described as a reject from Cryptic Writings, is what the reviewer had said about it.
I guess
And
that's a nice way of saying it, but
yeah,
probably I could
I
see that.
I could
I could
see it
see this
too.
song being on that album.
Yeah, especially because it's like um it's very much like not the same vibe as the other songs on the album. Like it doesn't really have the electronics like the synth and stuff that the other songs have. You know, it's just straight up guitar. It's like acoustic guitar for a good part of it, and then you know, of course, the chorus is the electric guitars come in. So you know, it's a more traditional Megadeth song for this album at least. You know,
Yeah, it's the closest thing to a real Megadeth song.
yeah,
And
um,
7 is also pretty decent.
yeah. Seven is
Like
okay.
lyrically, it's one of the it's one of the better songs.
Yeah,
It's like musically it's fine. Like I think it's all right. It does
yeah.
what it's supposed to do.
The distortion they use on the guitars, I'm not a huge fan of on Seven. It just sounds like a little. It sounds a
It's
little
a little
goofy.
out there.
Yeah, it sounds silly. Like with the way the riff is and like with the guitars, it sounds like goofy to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, I would say it's one of those songs where you listen to that and you're like, "Oh, that was an odd choice."
Yeah, the
And the
time.
last 2 tracks, the time ones, I really didn't pay that much attention to them, to be honest with you. I tried,
Yeah,
but they didn't really do anything for me.
time. The beginning is okay as like a ballad. You know, it's not terrible. Uh, time. The end is a little strange. I don't like it. Again, it was I think it was Dave Mustaine trying to like make a Megadeth song on an album that clearly wasn't a Megadeth album. You know, like it's kind of got like a Megadeth vibe to it, but then it's like just not good enough. You know, to
Mm.
be a Megadeth song.
Yeah, it
It's like
does have, like, the occasional Megadeth riff and where you're also just like, "Huh, that doesn't go here." Even
yes,
though, again, the Megadeth riff should not be the thing that doesn't fit with the Megadeth album, but
exactly.
it is what it is.
It's like almost like another band trying to do a Megadeth song. That's what
Yeah.
it feels like a little bit. You
Yeah,
know?
or a band influenced by Megadeth, but not
Yeah.
Megadeth themselves.
Yeah. And it's weird because like it's like they're doing these like riffs, like these like regular like kind of like thrashy or like metal riffs, but they're in like a major key signature, so it just sounds like off. It sounds goofy. And you know what it actually reminds me of? The riff from Time the End. It reminds me of the friggin' music when you're trying to sneak through Hyrule Castle in Ocarina of Time
Oh
a little bit.
God.
It's just like kind of like silly and goofy. So I definitely think of the times, Time the Beginning is the better one because it's you know it's like a nice little ballad kind of,
Mm,
you know, and I think you know like the lyrics on it kind of again is like Dave kind of like saying what he really feels like that time is kind of catching up with him a little bit, and you know he's like getting older, and you know you know at this point he was like had been in rehab several times, and you know was like still on drugs, and so I kind of feel like that's like you know again that's another like Dave kind of like opening up his heart a little bit, which
mhm,
was better. Like those songs that he does that I feel like are like the better ones, you know, because it's like it's real Dave. It's like what Megadeth is him saying what he wants to say, not trying to like make a fucking mainstream rock album, you know.
mhm.
So,
Yep. And I
but
mean,
yeah,
well, Japan actually got something pretty cool out of it.
yeah,
For their release, they got a instrumental cover of the Duke Nukem theme for
yes,
some reason, and I think that they used this in Duke Nukem Forever. I want to
yes,
say
they
they
did,
did.
they
Yeah.
did. At
Which,
least in the trailer for it, I think. I don't know if I don't if it was in the actual game. I'm not sure, but it was definitely in the trailer for it.
yeah, I don't know if they use it in the game. I've never played that one, but but yeah, I do know that they use it in the trailer.
Yeah,
But for years, I like when I was like downloading music and everything, I this always would come up if I was looking for Megadeth,
yeah,
like in high school, and I never believed it actually was them because I was like, well, this it clearly sounds like them, but I was like, would Megadeth really? I don't know if Megadeth would actually do it.
yeah.
And like I only found when whenever I found it, it always says Japanese version. So I was like, well, I like I'm on I'm on Napster, I'm on the dreaded Napster, or I'm on Kazaa or FrostWire or whatever, and or LimeWire, the one that everybody definitely knows.
Everyone gave
And
their computer aids.
oh yeah, and I was always like this like I because I'm downloading this illegally and it says Japanese edition, I don't know and I don't really know how true this is
Yeah,
that it's actually Megadeth.
yeah,
So I
and it
was
actually
always
was.
suspicious and turns out it actually was the entire time.
Yeah, David Day was actually a huge fan of Duke Nukem, the video game, and played it a lot. So he's like, "Oh, let's record this."
All right, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Kind of cool too.
yeah, yep,
Yep, and then later on like all the other Megadeth albums it's got remixed and remastered and like the remastered album features just alternative mixes
yeah.
to Insomnia, Breadline, and Crush 'Em, which
The Crush 'em alternative
that
mix
is
is
what it
like,
is.
I don't even know how they could make it worse, but they somehow did. And
Yeah.
so I actually had the remastered disc because I bought all the remastered Megadeth albums because I wanted to like complete the set, and also because if you look at the back spine of it, it had like little pictures of like it was like a slice of Vic Rattlehead, so that when you put them all together on the shelf, you would see Vic's face.
Yep, that was
So
very
I had
popular. That was very popular for remasters during that time. Like
yes,
Iron Maiden did it, where you would get Eddie,
yes.
and a ton of other bands did that too.
Yeah, so I had to buy Risk Remaster just so I could complete the set, right? And uh the liner notes that like Dave would like give little
I
like,
remember
you
you
know,
told me that you tried to like make Risk be the last one just
yeah.
because you did not want
Well, I'm
it
pretty
in your
sure yeah, I'm
collection.
pretty sure it was the last one that I got. And so the liner notes it was like you know, in the bonus ones they like Dave would like talk a little bit about the bonus tracks, like it was actually like Dave Mustaine personally like wrote a little thing about each of the bonus tracks, and it was cool because
I
on the
remember that
other
for
albums
Cryptic Writings.
what's that?
I remember reading it in the Cryptic
Yeah,
Writings remaster.
yeah, yeah. He did it for all of them, and it was cool because it
Yeah.
was like a nice little addition. And you get Dave's insight on the album a little bit.
I just always liked it when they had notes like that
Yeah.
on like in albums where it was the
Yes.
band discussing it.
Yes.
It was very cool.
But I remember for the Crush 'em one, he had wrote like basically like one sentence like this is like not my music at all. I hate this. Like basically like he completely like wrote it off and was like I'm not even going to comment on this. Like it cuz the Crush 'em Jock mix is I don't know how they could possibly make Crush 'em worse, but they did. It's just so corny and cheesy and it's like the first line it's like Davis saying going like here we go. Let's crush 'em. It's like so stupid. It's just so it's like, "Oh my god, what were they thinking?" Like, really? So, yeah. Overall, again, if it wasn't a Megadeth album, I would say it was a decent album. It was, a good album, not terrible.
Yeah,
Um,
I would give it like if it was not a Megadeth album, I would probably give it like a 6, 6.5.
yeah, yeah, 6 to a 7, I would say. It
Yeah,
would be fair score. Because it's a Megadeth album, it gets like a 4 to a 5. Because
yeah,
it's really not it shouldn't have been a Megadeth album.
yeah.
And, Dave would have done well to not make it a Megadeth album. I don't know why he did. I don't
I
know if
don't
he was just
know.
trying to get at like he had to do an album because Capitol Capitol had like a commitment that he had to do, and he's like,
That
well,
wouldn't
let's
have
make it.
surprised me
Yeah.
if it was the label plus like he had all these pressure from all these other people and he to his detriment he was trying to please everybody and he ended up
Yes.
not pleasing anyone because if this was the album where he was like okay well let's do this to keep Marty happy and maybe he'll get it out of his system and then the next album we can we'll really do something great that
Yeah.
backfired because Marty left anyway,
Yeah.
and he said it himself on an interview with Eddie Trunk on his Trunk Nation thing, like on his Trunk Nation podcast, where he was just like, Marty wanted to do, and Marty wanted to do this, and we were slowing things down. He would and then Ellefson wanted to do this thing, and then Nick Menza wanted it to be heavy, and then Dave was like, "Well, I just want it to be decent, but I guess we could try something different." And then the Lars thing comes in, so the ego fills in there, and then there's the Capitol Records guys, and then there's the band's manager saying, "Hey, try something different." And they all decided to do that. Plus you have the climate of metal in general and especially thrash metal and one of the big four where it's like, oh well, we have to adapt, otherwise we're going to be in, god forbid, working at a Walmart or something. And so we have to do something, and because 1999 was weird, and so was the whole 90s for thrash metal. So there was just all those factors. Just you got this, which I guess was really the best that they could do in like trying to please everybody. So
Yeah.
I think they all worked really really hard on this album, and they weren't phoning it in. They really tried. It's just it should never have been a Megadeth album, and Dave Mustaine has echoed those sentiments.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's really all that there is to say about this album. It's I'd say it's worth a listen to if you're curious, but but keep an open mind. Just make sure that you know that this is a Megadeth album in name only, but it's not as bad as other albums.
Yeah.
It's not as bad as it could have been, but it's it's definitely not great.
Yeah.
If it was
Yeah.
somebody else's album or if it had a different name under it, then it might be better received, but because it's a Megadeth album, this just is not that. But they did
Yeah.
follow it up with The World Needs a Hero, and that album was good. So fans have accepted that. Like fans have basically what's the word? They felt that it's been redeemed by the follow up.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the follow-up wasn't bad. It was definitely a return to form for Megadeth, but they still kinda, like it was still a little bit, like, kind of, like, more mainstream,
A
but, like,
little. But
they
definitely
definitely
but when you're coming from Risk, like it's a it's a welcome return. Like
yeah,
everyone's just kind of like, "Oh, this is the album that we should have got." So, I mean, they set themselves up for bigger for they set themselves up with Risk, but to where like they had inadvertently dropped the bar so low that anything that sounded close to regular Megadeth would have been just considered the best thing ever from them.
yeah.
And that paid well, that Risk paid off, but this one not so much. The actual Risk did not pay off.
Mhm. Yep.
So I don't know. Do we want to listen to any songs on this? I mean, we like people won't be able to hear it on YouTube anyway, but also like we've kind of been spotty with the YouTube stuff lately. It's my fault, but also I only have two hands and I'd like to get an assistant, but I really can't pay that much. So it's like if you want to do something out of the kindness of your heart, I'll give you the keys to the YouTube car and hopefully don't say anything mean that would like on other people's comments or do something to get us banned. But if you want to do that, that would be really great. And you could reach out at why does this exist pod.com. Yeah, I mean, why does this exist show at gmail.com, excuse me, or you could just DM us on Facebook and we say, hey, I'd like to do it. And that would be great. If you can, you can. If you can't, you can't.
Yeah,
But I as much as I would like to get the YouTube stuff back on track, it is a process and it's very time consuming and we don't do this for a living. We have regular jobs. So
yes.
it's time is time. We have jobs, we have families and it's just being able to do the show is like it sometimes takes quite a bit for us to do. But we do it for you guys and this is also just a great way for us to just keep in touch. So if you're listening, thank you so much for just supporting the show by being you.
Yes.
Especially if you're Muhammad and who keeps sending us the very weird images. Keep sending us the buff cakes.
The buff cakes.
But for I don't know. Do we want to listen to tunes
Well,
or do you think we're good?
I think we have to figure out how to make tunes work because I don't think Craig will record like the
Well,
way we
that's
used to.
true. I don't really know how it works with Craig, so maybe
Yeah,
we'll
we
have
have to
to
get like a
experiment with that another time.
DJ bot or something to do that. So we'll experiment with
Just
that next time we do.
DJ Craig.
Yeah, we'll have to do something and get another bot to play music for us so that Craig can record it.
All right.
And you
Well,
guys can actually hear it. So
yep. Well, all right. Well, now that we've pulled back the curtain, and we've taken a big risk ourselves by letting just what our situations are. If you want to help us out, we'd greatly appreciate it. Patreon.com/, why does this exist? Or just simply make a bunch of people listen to our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. That would also be another way to help us because we get a little bit of money every time somebody listens to or downloads this, thanks to our pals at Spreaker. And but however we can get this to happen, we would greatly appreciate it. We appreciate each and every one of you for listening every single week. So with that said, this has been Risk. This has also been Why Does This Exist? I have been Chris.
and I've been Rob.
And remember, question everything.